Decisions are made not in Washington, but by the democratically elected government of Israel in Jerusalem. No, as ambassador, my job is much less about making decisions than it is about answering questions. Government ministers in Jerusalem might pick up the phone one day and ask me, how can Israel help cope with that disastrous oil spill in the Mexican Gulf? A journalist may call me and ask me if Syrian President Bashar al-Assad is serious in his declarations for peace. Some of the hardest questions, this won't come as a surprise to you, come from anti-Israel activists on American campuses. Typically, I'm asked, how can I, as an American-born Jew, move freely to Israel while an American-born Palestinian cannot? Now, just as historians have to make some hard decisions, so too, I, as ambassadors, give some straight answers. To the government ministers, I reply that yes, Israel can help address the Gulf crisis by supplying to the United States oil-eating algae that are cultivated in Israeli laboratories. We can make available Israel's advanced solar and electric car technology, reducing America's dependence on oil. I answer that journalist by saying that Israel will believe the peace declarations of the Syrian president once he stops sending tens of thousands of rockets to Hezbollah, closes the Hamas headquarters in Damascus, and severs his ties with Iran. And to the anti-Israel activist on campus, I reply that while there are 22 independent Arab states, there is only one very small Jewish state. And it is the right of every Jew in the world to return to our homeland, because that right comes as a corrective to 2,000 years of homelessness, of inquisitions, of expulsions, and of massacres. Our right to return is our affirmative action, righting a monumental historical wrong. And I add, the Palestinians too will have a right to return to settle in their own independent state once they eschew violence and negotiate a permanent peace with us. But as ambassador, there is one question which I must admit I have a great difficulty in answering. It is the question about a decision. Why, people ask me, why did you decide to move to Israel? And where do I begin to answer? Do I begin with my youth growing up under the shadow of the Holocaust, witnessing the extreme tension and ultimate joy of the 1967 Six-Day War? Should I mention volunteering on a kibbutz and participating in the struggle to free Soviet Jewry? Or do I try to explain the extraordinary fortune of growing up at a time in Jewish history when an independent, proud, and vibrant Jewish state exists, that I have the zchut, the privilege, of taking responsibility for that state, responsibility for its shortcomings as well as for its successes. Believe it or not, rarely a week or even a day goes by when I'm not asked that question by non-Jews and Jews alike, and I confess that question leaves me nonplussed. Therefore, it is with great relief and incalculable honor that I address the graduating class of Yeshiva University. For here, among you, I know I will never ever be asked that question. Here, I know that you know the answer. Intrinsically, intellectually, spiritually, you know the answer. And you have always known the answer. Religious Zionism has always been at the forefront of the epic struggle to recreate Jewish sovereignty in the land of Israel. More than 100 years ago, religious Zionists were among the pioneering vanguard that forged the first modern Jewish settlements and cities. They fought in the ranks of the Jewish Legion during World War I, in the Hebrew Brigade during the Second World War, in the Haganah, in the Lehi, in the Etzel. Bridging the worlds of Torah and secular studies, religious Zionists created internationally renowned centers of spiritual and scientific learning, from Merkaz Harav to Bar Ilan University. Religious Zionists were there on May 13th, 1948, urging that Israel's independence be declared. And over the course of the next 62 years, religious Zionists helped guide Israel through successive wars and crises. Throughout, those Zionists have been committed to the belief in the Jewish state as Rishit Tzmichat Yulatenu, the first flourishing of our redemption, and dedicated to Israel as a modern democracy in which a wide array of ideas and interests must be reconciled. Whenever difficult decisions had to be made, an intrepid answer rendered, religious Zionists were ready. And in America, here, no institution better represents this readiness, this commitment to combining Jewish and secular scholarship, the dedication to preserving Israel and defending its essential relations with the United States. No institution better represents that extraordinary legacy than this institution, Yeshiva University. That legacy was personified by an expansive list of outstanding graduates. One such alumnus was Baruch Rabinowitz, a native of New Jersey, who traveled to Jerusalem in 1932 to study under Harav Kook, but who also became active in the revisionist Zionist movement, protesting Nazi oppressions of the Jews. He gained some fame by climbing atop the German consulate in Jerusalem and ripping down the Nazi flag. Later, Rabinowitz returned to the United States. He earned his smicha from Yeshiva University, and there he also raised funds for the Zionist underground. But it was during World War II that Rabbi Rabinowitz made his greatest contribution to Zionism. He joined with a group of young Jews, then known as Palestine, a young group of young Jews led by Harav Kook's nephew. Together, they worked to arouse American Jews to the horrors of the Holocaust and to rally them to the cause of Jewish statehood. Against unspeakable odds, and at a time when such ideas and activities were considered utterly revolutionary, Rabbi Rabinowitz and his colleagues organized congressional petitions. They took out full-page ads in the New York Times. No one had ever done that before. They even produced a pro-Zionist show starring Bob Hope, Zero Mostel, Ethel Merman, with music by Count Basie and the Andrews sisters. This is sort of like Lady Gaga doing this today. Imagine. And guess where they staged it? They staged it in Madison Square Garden. The heroism and creativity displayed by Rabbi Rabinowitz proved pivotal in making America the first nation to recognize the recreated Jewish state. And his example has been replicated by other Yeshiva graduates, such as Rabbi Joshua Fass, founder of Nefesh B'Nefesh, that ingenious organization. And, Nefesh B'Nefesh